and welcome once again to this talk on oral history and archives in reminiscence work. We will start this talk with a short film. We wanted to start this talk with this short film because we feel that this film captures some of the key ideas that we'll be sharing this evening in the course of this talk. The ideas that Pat and I, for easy remembrance, we position it as the MRT in reminiscence work for the elderly. M as in the residual long-term memory. The elderly may suffer from some memory loss with aging. Typically, however, there are some memories from the distant past which are well preserved, and opportunities to assess these memories through reminiscence work may help to conserve them longer. R as in reminiscence, contributing in small but crucial ways to the personal well-being of the elderly, their family members and caregivers. T as in using familiar objects from the past as prompts to trigger memories. In the film, we saw the husband trying out various memory prompts to help trigger his wife's memories. First, he used a framed photograph of the couple's younger selves. Photographs are especially relevant to a person's life story, and they are especially productive when used in reminiscence work. Photographs of family occasions, photographs of places of work, school, leisure, the street that one grew up in. He then used a scarf once worn by the wife. In reminiscence work, 3D objects bring back memories because of the way they look and feel, their weight and texture. Finally, the husband played a vinyl recording. Music and songs from earlier times are a powerful stimulus and often trigger associated memories on social occasions, significant days, and relationships. For reminiscence to be a positive experience, it is very important that it is a person-centered approach and done in a way that takes account of the elderly's difficulties that come with aging. It is about paying attention to what the elderly can still do instead of focusing on what they cannot do. So what is reminiscence? It is essentially a means of capturing parts of the past and focusing on them to enrich our daily lives, remembering and sharing stories about things that we have done, the places we have visited, the people we knew. We all do this naturally, and generally we enjoy it. Hearing other people's recollections also triggers our own half-forgotten memories and can generate a collective sense of shared experience. The late Dr. Robert Butler, who passed away in 2010, was an American psychiatrist with a specialty in geriatric medicine. He is credited with the idea that reminiscing could be therapeutic. He first spoke of the idea of a life review in the 1960s. At the time, psychiatrists did not think it was a good idea for people to always be living in the past. But Butler disagreed and made it clear that reminiscence was a natural process of healthy aging. Let's take a look at this slide. The metaphor of archives as memory is commonly perceived within the profession. The perception that archives are often associated with history and the past again relates to memory. The veteran Dutch archivist Eric Ketteler summed up these notions well when he said, "Archives are time machines, enabling man to carry his thoughts, experiences, and achievements through time." Virginia Bell has lectured widely on dementia care, while David Troxell is an internationally known expert in Alzheimer's disease and memory care. In one of their joint writings, they argued that life history is as important to holistic care as medical history is to medical care. Let's now take a look at some examples on how the value of life histories and archives may be unlocked in reminiscence work to benefit the elderly in society. The European Reminiscence Network started in 1993 and was coordinated by Pam Switzer. It aims to promote best practice in reminiscence work and to share experience across national frontiers. Pam Switzer is also the founder of the UK Exchange Theatre and the Reminiscence Theatre Archive. The University of Greenwich Galleries in the UK hosts an international exhibition of the European Reminiscence Network of Memory Boxes, created by artists and older people in several countries. If you look at this slide, the concept of the memory box involves, number one, the older person reflecting back on his or her life history with the appointed artist. Number two, together they create a 3D mini installation featuring objects, photographs, and documents that are relevant to the person's life story. The resulting memory boxes then serve as an inspiration for students of the arts to create performances anchored on these life stories, known as Reminiscence Theatre. In June this year, in conjunction with an International Archival Symposium hosted by the National Archives of Singapore, we invited Pam Switzer to conduct a 2-day workshop titled Archives and Oral History in Art and Theatre. This workshop was very much in line with the symposium's umbrella theme of rethinking archives, reframing boundaries, imagining possibilities. The team explored topics like how archives and oral history could be creatively employed in community engagement to reach out to the elderly in particular. Pam provided the workshop participants with a theoretical and practical framework on the use of archives, oral history, and objects in interpretive art and the dramatization of life stories. The participants learned how to create and curate memory boxes drawn from their personal archives and life stories with the aid of craft materials. In this slide, we can see 3 of the memory boxes built by the participants. If you look at the picture at the bottom left, It is a memory box created by Patrick Mock from Hong Kong. And let's hear from Patrick how he felt about creating this memory box. This is a quote from Patrick. I think Patrick is sharing his emotions before and after attending the workshop, and how doing this particular activity has reframed his relationship with his own mother. And if you look at the piece of white paper here, the handwritten words by Patrick, if I may read it out to you, it says, "Life would not end there. She continues to connect and inspire me, as if she enlivens herself in a different form." So we thought this is really quite touching. Yeah. So I will now share about the video that you saw earlier on regarding the NAS SOTA intergenerational project. The project was titled From Oral History Transcripts to Memory Boxes and Theatre, and it comprised two components: an exhibition of memory boxes and a performance. For the performance, 3 theatre students from SOTA dramatized a segment of the life stories of 4 interviewees of the NAS Oral History Centre, while 6 visual arts students enhanced the performance with a display of 8 specially constructed memory boxes containing the curated archives of the interviewees' personal belongings, including objects, photos, and documents. The interviewees aged between the 70s to the 100s are Captain Ho Weng To, a retired pilot who joined Malayan Airways that later branched off into SIA. Captain Ho flew with SIA for 30 years until his retirement. He's also one of the last few remaining flying tigers, the legendary Chinese and American Joint Flying Squadron that fought against the Japanese in World War II. Dr. Uma Rajan, a retired medical doctor and Indian classical dancer. Sumitera Muhammad Letek, also known as Sumi, a retired midwife. She had delivered hundreds of babies at the southern islands of Singapore, traveling by sampans to provide care to the villagers on the islands. Vernon Cornelius, former DJ, professional singer, and a member of the Quest, a popular Singapore band of the 1960s. I'm sure most of you will be acquainted with the Quest. Yeah. Okay. The next slide shows 4 of the memory boxes created by the SOTA's visual arts students. Captain Ho's memory box at the top right picture took the form of a suitcase, a replication of the SIA suitcase that he once carried. The guitar case was chosen to represent Vernon's memory box. The photographs plastered on the box bore the memories and experiences of Vernon's journey in music. The vinyl recordings not visible in this picture that lined the interior of the guitar case highlighted the achievements and milestones in his career. The phoenix perched on top of this bird cage that he has broken out of was a memory box created for Dr. Rajan. The phoenix symbolizes elegance and grace, and most importantly, tenacity. The student who created this box felt that the phoenix best expressed Dr. Rajan's outlook towards life and how she rose from every low point of her life. The box built for Sumi was a rare created mid-wivery bag. This seemingly clinical and cold bag opens up to a diorama capturing Sumi's memories of her occupation back then. To do this project, the students poured through the oral history transcripts of the 4 interviewees. They also researched at the cultural and historical context of the interviewees' lived experiences. As the interviewees were conducted by the NAS Oral History Centre many years ago, the students met with the interviewees to be updated of their life stories and also to establish a rapport with them. The resulting performance and the memory boxes that you just saw reflected the students' personal reflections and response to the interviewees' life histories. What about the 4 interviewees? How did they react to this whole project? Let's find out from one of them.
To share with me your experience of working with the SOTA students for this project. We call it the Intergenerational Reminiscence Project. What is your experience working with the students?
First and foremost, I tell myself I'm lucky. How come Patricia can send little girl to me? What have I done? I said like that. Then after talking to them, I see they're very keen, and then like they never hear this type of of experience I have, I felt so happy. And I felt so happy. I said, my God, at least I share, and then they will talk. They will talk to friends. They will talk to their parents, right? I met this lady. This is how she worked before. Terrible. So I felt proud and very happy.
That's Sumi, the midwife, the retired midwife, sharing her feelings towards this intergenerational project. Let's take a look how some other organizations in Singapore and elsewhere are supporting reminiscence work. We shall start with Japan. In 2010, with over 21% of its population aged 65 or older, Japan became one of the world's first super-aged societies. The elderly population there is expected to reach roughly 30% in 2025 and 40% in 2060. The increase in the country's population of persons living with dementia is equally serious, with an expected total of 7 million people in 2025, or 1 in every 5 seniors. In response, Japan's national broadcaster, the NHK, has set up a reminiscence therapy library for family members and care workers to use in reminiscence work. For this purpose, the library has created materials drawn from the vast NHK archives of some 900,000 television programs and more than 7 million news items. The curated materials are made available through a variety of channels, including a website, DVDs, and broadcasts. The DVDs are distributed for free to the elderly care facilities in Japan. The curated materials include, for example, a virtual reality program that allows the viewers to look around the interiors of houses from the 1930s and the 1950s. In another example, when the viewers enter their age, they are shown a timeline of notable events. The timeline is accompanied by news clips and allows them to think back on what they might be doing at the time of these events. The viewers are also shown a screen with questions on it that they can answer to assist them with their reminiscence. The picture on your right shows the NHK archive staff, Nobuhisa Yamashita. He was looking for some interesting materials to show me when I visited the archives. Yeah. There's a similar project developed by the British Broadcasting Corporation in collaboration with the universities in the UK. This project is known as BBC Reminiscence Archive, or BBC RemArt for short. It draws on the BBC's archive of photos, music, spoken word recordings, and film from 1940 to 1980 as prompts to help trigger memories and stimulate conversations between the elderly and their caregivers. In 2017, the National Archives of the United Kingdom prepared a vision document titled Archives Unlocked, Releasing the Potential. The document recognizes the role that archives can play in an aging society and the relevance of the archives to improve the well-being of the elderly in the community. The Nestle UK and Ireland is one of the first businesses to produce a reminiscence pack developed in consultation with the UK-based Alzheimer's Society, which leads the fight against dementia in the country. The pack includes wrappers and packaging from Nestle's confectionery archive and aims to help trigger happy recollections among those with dementia or memory problems. There's a quote there from Alison Cook from the Alzheimer's Society on how something as simple as a sweet wrapper can bring back some happy memories for the elderly. Okay. Let's now take a look at some of the local initiatives in Singapore where reminiscence work is concerned. The list here is by no means exhaustive. We have, for example, a virtual reality project by the Alzheimer's Disease Association, or ADA, which aims to stimulate the mind and as a form of physiotherapy for persons living with dementia. In the Silent Disco Sessions project, spearheaded by the Lien Foundation in partnership with ADA and the Asian Women's Welfare Association, or AWWA, participating seniors from the ADA and AWWA dementia daycare centres put on their own wireless headphones and dance to tunes of their own choosing, instead of having music blasted over a speaker system. Okay. From the National Heritage Board, we have a Heritage Trunks program. This theme trunks containing authentic objects from the 1950s to the 1980s were curated and distributed to seniors. And this is a collaboration with the St. Luke's Elder Care. From the NHB also, we have a House of Memories program. It includes an app loaded with photographs from the NHB's National Collection as a tool for persons with dementia to reminisce and bond with caregivers. This is a NHB British Council National Museums Liverpool collaboration. Let's now look at some statistics for Singapore. On the rate we are aging as a society, we see from this slide that 1 in 4 citizens will be aged 65 and above by 2030, which is just some 10 years away from now. By 2030, 90,000 elderly above 65 years old in Singapore will be living with dementia. And this figure is expected to double to 187,000 by 2050. At the same time, the old age support ratio for the Singapore population is going down. And by 2030, we are looking at 2 working age citizens for every 1 elderly. So, against these statistics of an aging population in Singapore, the increasing number of people living with dementia here and the old age support ratio, how then can we, together with our community, unleash or seize the potential of archives and life histories in reminiscence work to benefit our elderly in society, such that we can bring a smile to our elderly and keep people like Alice smiling. On this note, I will invite Pat to deliver the second half of this talk. Thank you.
Is Sharon here? Sharon, can I see her? Okay, Sharon is the daughter of Alice. All right. Alice is a friend of ADA. She's in her 90s. My ADA friends, can you please raise your hand? ADA friends, volunteers, caregivers, staff, can you raise your hand, please? Okay, we want to give thanks to ADA because they really gave me an opportunity to experiment with something that I thought would be useful in the course of my work. I found oral history. I've been an oral history interviewer for the last 30 years, and I thought it was very therapeutic, but I wasn't too sure, and I wanted to experiment it with persons with dementia. So I did cold call, knock on the door. MSF, we have you to thank to, the director, who cheered me on and say, give a try, have a go at it. And ADA was wonderful. They allowed me to pilot run this project, and I'm eternally grateful to you. All right. So this is Alice. Alice is 90 years old. She is a person with dementia. Now, why do I say, how do we put smiles on the faces of the elderly? But you will realize that I added something on and keep them smiling. So I'm talking about sustainability. I think if you look at Irene's sharing, I think all of us, in our own ways, some of you are from the hospitals, some of us are educators. We always desire to put smiles, and we run programs, we run activities. But the question is, at the end of the day, what happens after the activities? How do we keep the elderly to continue to put that smile on the face? Is something that is very close to my heart. So we just don't want to do a rah-rah show and then hype them up, and then after that, tomorrow, what happens to them when they go home? So this is something that I want to deliberate and to discuss with everybody, and to also get you to start thinking about it, especially for those of us who are working with the elderly. Right? So Irene spoke, gave some knowledge, gave some information, statistics about persons living with dementia in Singapore and overseas. And also, I think increasingly, if you read the newspaper, the reach is really extensive, from the museum to different institutions, from St. Andrews, from St. Luke's. I think we have all various forms of reminiscence program in place. But what I am interested is, how then do we deepen relationship with these individuals? What are the things that we can do to make the conversation with the elderly purposeful? So we're going to do a little exercised here. Now, imagine, all right, these are the Lau sisters, okay? So this is elder Lau and this is younger Lau, and these pictures were taken in 1939, and then they just took another shot in 2019. Now imagine if you visit the Lau family and they bring out their album and they show it to you and they say, this is a picture of ourselves when we were young and we are old today. Now, how can you use a photograph or two photographs to engage in a meaningful conversation with them? So you take 1 minute of your time. If you have a handphone, just scribble all the questions that you may have using this photograph to find out more about them. Otherwise, just use it mentally. What are some questions that you can ask to get to know them better? 1 minute. Okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to pass the mic around. Okay, so the question that you have in mind to get to know these two sisters better, just raise that question. And if you find yourself having a similar question, it's okay. Just say pass. All right? But if you have a new questions, just add on to the group. So I'm going to start the mic with you here. So imagine these sisters, okay? Elder Lau showed you. 你睇呢個係我個相啊，我同我 sister call what in Cantonese？ 我同我個妹 ，okay, my sister 一齊 whatever 啦，的啦 ，okay. So what are some of the questions that you can ask?
Both of them?
Yeah, you just ask any questions
I
based on
want
this
to
photograph.
Ask them what are the happiest things that have happened to them in the past 80 or more years. I mean, in their life so far.
Okay, thank you. Next.
To add on to that, I mean, what have changed and what remains.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to ask what was happening when that photo was taken. What do you remember of it?
Okay.
My question is, there are two beautiful ladies now, but they seem to be dressed up as boys. The hair, the combing of the hair, and the other sister on the left, on my left from this point, she's wearing a male attire. So were they hoping for a male child to come next? I do not know. Just curious.
Actually, I'm looking at the year 1939. Actually, that year is actually, I think they have gone through the World War II, the Japanese occupation. If I were to see them, I will ask them about the war years maybe, because I wasn't born during that time.
The 1939 photo. Did your parents ever tell you about who took the photos? Where did you take it? And did they discuss with you and sometimes look over the photos and talk about them with you both?
Yeah, I think from my parents, I'm not older lah. So for my parents' time, the taking photo is not that common. So maybe I'll ask them what's the occasion that they are taking a photo for.
I asked them where the photo was taken.
I will ask what's going through their minds as they look at these photos and a significant memory of their sisterhood days, childhood days.
I'll ask them why their parents want to dress them in a boy.
Just ask them what is the tidbits they like to eat at that time as a child.
In the earlier photo, the older sister has her arm around the younger sister, but it's the other way around now.
I'll ask about the age difference and also ask which animal year they were born in, and perhaps to reflect on the characteristics.
I'd ask if they fought when they were young and about what sort of things.
I'll ask them about
maybe their neighbors, because in the past, I think the relationship with the neighbors, how it was like.
We talk about fashion, we talk about gender issue, we talk about relationship, we talk about the warriors, and somebody even say the games that they play. So can you imagine the power of photographs? Just one photo and you can really, really engage the person, the elderly, for a long time, depending on the questions you want to ask. The reason why I ask to do this exercise is I want to introduce something that ADA is going to roll out very soon, and that is, they call it Journey with Arts and Dementia by ADA. And so this is a memory kit that that they will be using, and it comprises photographs that's gleaned through the National Archives of Singapore collection. So we're very happy that Siti is here. Siti was the one who combed through our National Archives collection and selected 50 photographs, and together with some artifacts, they are going to use this kit, and I believe they are going to use it and make it available to different places, nursing homes, daycare center, for the clients to use. Am I correct? Yeah. So we're very happy, and I think two a photographer, Liang Seng and Kat, are here. They are basically the ones who will be giving talks on how this kit can be used. But what I really want to challenge some of us who, and I read it a lot in the papers, we are using a lot of photographs to engage the elderly. We want you to think a little bit deeper on how photographs can be used. So even as you use the photo, 50 photographs can use it to spin a lot of stories together with the help of artifacts. All right. Besides getting photographs from the National Archives, I want you to think about the use of personal archival materials. So I call it take off your cap, and cap stands for a curated archives of a person's belonging. So it can be in the form of birth, marriage certificates, report books, cooking recipes, and objects that help to trigger the memories of past activities and events. So I'm going to share with you that even in the use of personal archives, we can actually adopt two approaches: group reminiscence work and individual reminiscence work for continuity. Remember, I was talking about sustainability. So this is Alice reminiscing about her family photograph, one of the managers at the ADA Center. Let me talk to you about the value of reminiscence. I think Irene, you have shared. So the persons with dementia, it doesn't even need to be a person with dementia, the elderly. The thing is that they have long-term residual memory, and we can actually use creative means, reminiscence through creative means, to engage them. And I want to share with you some of the very interesting activities that took place, where the focus will be more on the use of archives and oral history, but it cannot be silo. It works together with other reminiscence form of arts and enactment and also 3D objects and that kind of thing. So I'm going to share with you some of the activities that we did. And I want to submit to you that it is something that can be so enjoyable for the elderly. So I have some things to show you. So why is it oral history? Because oral history uses a method. So there are two ways to collect stories. One way is through thematic approach, right? You talk about pastimes, you talk about the war years, you talk about growing up years, school days, and that kind of thing. And then as you progress, you talk about marriage. So we run 12 sessions on group reminiscence, starting from the day they were born, from their family life, to going to school, to starting work, to getting married, to having children, and all the way to retirement. So this is one of the activities that we did, and you realize that it's very holistic, because it's the use of things like the certificates, and we get them to bring their own personal archival materials like wedding photographs, and then you know what, we did something crazy. We reenacted a wedding experience for Mr. and Mrs. Mark. Mabel, are you here? Mabel is not here, all right? So we did a reenactment. So they came for this program not knowing that they were going to renew their vows. So on the spot, we got them prepared, and then we brought our coat. If you look at Derek, Derek is over sitting right behind, but Derek is not the son of Mr. Mark. Derek is the son of Iris, who is also part of the program. So we do a lot of reenactment, and Mrs. Mark Lily has absolutely very little recollection of her wedding day. So we wanted to get her to experience and remember what is it like being married again. Okay, and then we even recreated a scene where they were married. You know, I think it was at the Capitol, one of the restaurant at the Capitol Theatre. Okay, and then listen to what Mr. Mark says. Okay, Mr. Mark is a caregiver, but Mr. Mark has Parkinson too, and listen to what he says at the end of this. The audio isn't very good, but I think it should be loud enough for you to hear it.
All the events that happened today will linger in my memory for years. I shall ponder over them whenever time permits. Thank you very much for your attendance. Without your coming, this occasion would not have happened. And would not bring so much joy to me. Thank you very much.
Anyway, so Mrs. Mark really cannot remember, but as her husband tells the story, she recognizes the story and she remembered that she rented her wedding gown somewhere along High Street. And the funny thing is that when we recreated this scene for her, she laughed non-stop. And you know what she say? She said, 搞笑行动. It's like so funny for her, all right? And we had a wonderful time. But remember, the program doesn't end here. Because next week when they come back again, we start talking about having babies. And then it's a whole new experience for them all together. So there's continuity in what we do. This is something that is very close to my heart, and that is getting the person with dementia to reminisce their past, and help them connect with their loved ones and carers. And this is something that's very close to my heart, because most of the time the tendency is, can you do this program for me or not? Can I send mom to a daycare center? Can you come down to St. Luke's Hospital? Can you come down to do this program? But then I say, okay, I can run this program. I can do a 3-month program, a 12-week program on reminiscence. The question is what happens after next, right? And you will realize that each time when we bring our loved ones back home, the usual conversation will be, 食飽未? Have you eaten? 肚落疼? And they will always tell you about which part of their body aches and the medicine and their, all the medical conditions. And I say, hey, I think there's a better way to engage our parents. How about we get them to reminisce the past with us? So what happened after that group reminiscence session is I told some of the carers, I say, hey, how about you start interviewing your parents? How about you start collecting their own stories? And we did a 4-week training on using oral history, all right, to collect the stories. And I think Sharon has been quite compliant. I don't know, Sharon, are you still collecting your mom's story? Okay, yeah. Right, but you were still collecting her story when she was hospitalized. So I'm just going to play a very short clip of how Sharon, and she does it during her free time, you know, when she comes back from work, and then when they're in very relaxed mood, and she will start talking to mom, and she will put it on record for a purpose. So these are some of the things, Audrey, if you can see yourself, there were a few volunteers at ADA. Some of them are counselors, social workers, and we started a program called Tell Me Your Story, where we collected the stories of persons with dementia, and they're very excited to tell the stories. Okay, so let's listen to Sharon and how she would, you know, in her free time, ask her mom to tell her stories. This is done on iPhone, so it's not very clear. So we'll talk about equipment later and the importance of it. But listen to this, huh?
Friday, 7th September 2018. Having a chat with Mom again. And the title today is Happy Memories. Mom, I want to ask you about just now the photo that I showed you. Do you remember the photo of me when I was 2, wearing the red pinafore, carrying my doggy handbag, and you in your hair, right? Okay. Do you remember where that was?
Esplanade there too.
Okay. It was along what walk? Do you remember?
What walk they call that?
Queen?
Queen Elizabeth Walk.
Yes.
Ah.
You talk louder, okay? So we can record you.
Queen Elizabeth Walk.
Yeah, and that's near the Esplanade.
Yeah.
Near the Satay Club, right?
Yeah,
We
yeah,
used
yeah.
to go.
Satay Club there.
Do you remember how often you used to take me there?
Every weekend, I think so. We go there, eat and all that, the old man and all that.
Jalan-jalan.
Yeah, I old man, weekend and Saturday or Sunday, you see. We usually don't cook on that day, right? And mostly on Saturday.
Okay. So did we used to take the boys with us?
Boys that time I can't remember.
Did they have schoolwork?
Yeah, they have school or homework sometimes. Sometimes they have tuition, Chinese tuition and all that.
So you only take me for a walk?
Yeah. Because to give the boys tuition, the teacher, so you don't control them.
I used to.
Where everything should be systematic, but it is the process that we are looking at. We are not really trying to make sure that she gets her facts right. All right. So, Mark, this is something, a deviation from oral history methodology. But nonetheless, we adapt and you know, we ask leading questions because we are helping them to recognize stories. So the other thing I realized about working with persons with dementia is that actually, Sharon, you did all the wrong things. You always say, Mom, can you remember? Can you remember? Obviously, she cannot remember. So remembering is a bad word. We don't use the word remember, but we lead them on, all right? We ask questions. And the other thing about it is that as you get to talk about your stories, and Sharon is very clever because she'll say, Mom, you know, did you see this photograph? I you know, this was taken when I was 2 years old and I was wearing a red dress and carrying a doggy bag. Because sometimes they cannot recollect their stories, but they can recognize the stories. So as we share the stories, somehow or other, there's some kind of link and say, yeah, I thought that happened before. And this happened when I was in, so this is my first experience interviewing someone with dementia for the Oral History Center for the Indian Community Oral History Project. Where is Raj here? Raj is not here. So we wanted to capture the story of Mr. Lau because the father started the first English school in Cecil Street. And when I told when I told his son about interviewing him, he said, Alamak, I don't think my father can remember. But because it was something that was close to my heart, and I said, can you let me try? She said, okay. So I'm with my recorder, and I met the wife a couple of times, and I told Auntie, I said, Auntie, can you please help me? Let's work together. And so what she did was she plowed all the photographs for me. And you know, photographs are very small, right? So what we did was we blew it till A4 size, and we arranged it in such a way that we will point him to a particular photograph so that he can recollect. And it was so fantastic. I always remember this story about him. So he was being educated by his father in the English school in Cecil Street too. And he had those very fond memories, and he says that in those days they didn't have a bell. So when it's time for food, he will use a fork with a glass, and then the mother will hit the glass and then go ding, and it's a form of bell ring for them. So very interesting. And every time, whenever he cannot remember something, he'll look to his wife, Auntie, and then Auntie will tell the story. And as Auntie tells the story, he continues the rest of the story. So very, very powerful in that sense for me. We know that as we grow older, we are no longer healthy. So if you imagine those of us who are 60s and above or 50s and above, we will always talk about some common topics, and that is really about joint aches, backache, and whatever aches we have. But I find that one of the things about reminiscence is, like what Irene has said earlier, is really focusing on the things that they can do and not the things that they cannot do. And sometimes transporting them back into the past is really something quite nice, you know, and they remember they were fitter and they were independent, and music is so powerful. I think we spoke about, what was the silent, Francis, what's this silent thing that ADA just wrote? Silent disco that came up, and I was told that music is the last part of the memory that we will lose, and so we say, okay, let's dance. So what happened was, you know, there's this thing these days called the young old and the old. So which category do you belong to? Is it the young old or the old? All right. So what happens is that we decided that we'll get the young old to engage the people who are old. So if you look at this picture, this is one of my church friends. His name is Louis, and Louis has a huge collection of records, vinyl records, all right, by the hundreds. And so we paid him a visit, and I said, hey, Louis, can you do me a favor now? Can I spin record for all my friends, persons with dementia? We call this our alumni club gathering. So what happens was, then somebody offered, open up the place. A carer opened up her house. And so we lugged all the records there, and then Louis lugged all his record player, including the record player and his speakers. And we started spinning records, and then we printed old song sheets. And then we got the elderly to say, hey, you choose your songs. And they got all so excited. They want Doris Day, they want Frank Sinatra. And memories start trickling about those dancing days where they went to Happy World, Gay World, and they danced together. And we had a wonderful time, and you can see us holding hands, singing songs. And it was fun. And Iris almost couldn't make it. Derek is behind. Derek is Iris' son. Almost couldn't make it because we couldn't arrange for transport. So we went to pick her up, and she was all dressed up for that night. Derek, when I sent your mom back, she gave me a very, very tight hug, and she said, I really enjoyed myself so much. And actually, they were all scrambling, including the carers, because the carers, like some of us, were all in our 50s and 60s. So we also want to spin our music, but ours is like ABBA, the newer group, you know, whereas they were the older ones, all right? But why am I showing you this video? Because I want you to take note that there are many people involved in this whole gathering. We have the grandchildren, we have the carers, we have the persons with dementia, we even have the domestic helpers. We always believe in having the helpers as part of our program, because in our program, every person is important, including the carers. And you'll be surprised, the carers that come from Sri Lanka, Indonesia, remember, they have many things to reminisce about their past too. And they are the ones, at the end of the day, they are the ones who end up taking care of the elderly, you know. So if you equip them with the right reminiscence skills, they can be very powerful helpmates. We're going to come to something a bit more serious about reminiscence and the use of oral history in particular. This is a time where, towards the end of their life, they are trying to make sense of their present. And I want to share this story about my mother. I interviewed my mother in 1988. Anyway, her oral history is available online. You can look at her session number. When she was 68 years old. And then, at some point in time in 2014, I played her oral history interview for her. And I deliberately brought up two objects. These were the wedding gifts from her grandmother. You know, is that belt and my sister-in-law is here. All right, and she would listen very intensely. But what I really want to talk about is this particular picture just before she passed on. I think 4 months before she passed on, and we played back her oral history for her to listen, and she could recite the nursery rhyme. Okay, I don't have time to play it. Actually, it's a record. But the thing is that these are things that trigger her memories. But what the point I'm trying to talk about my mother is this. My mother has very low esteem of herself. She would say, "Oh, Boyong." You know why? Because she doesn't know how to write a name. I say, even my own name, I don't even know how to write. I'm so useless. But you will realize that when we stopped collecting her story in 1988, that was for a Teochew project. But religiously, I carry on, keeping her story like what you did, Sharon, on my handphone. And then I say, why does she keep saying that she's useless? But she keeps telling me through her oral history interviews that, she used to sell mee siam at the 5 Foot Way, and she could help out in the hawker center, I think a vegetarian store where she was a cleaner. And then subsequently she told me that she was a tontine leader. And then next minute in the 70s she says that, B, what part 2? You know it's part 2 or not? That means she can buy and sell houses, She acts as a middle woman, agent, real estate agent in those days. So one day I went to her and I said, "Mom, why did you say that you're useless? You're quite clever, I said, in Teochew, I said, actually you're very clever. And guess what? After a while, she found a new narrative in her own story. And before she died, she said, a book, she calls herself, a book, that means I am a clever girl. Wow, what a wonderful new narrative. So new narrative need not be bad, because sometimes you reassess and re-examine your own memory. All right. I'm going to end with this story, and it's again something that I wanted to experiment in oral history. And I say, can oral history be used as a form of palliative care? Now, if you look at this lady, she's Shirley. She has passed on, so she died 3 months after the oral history interview. I'm not sure, I think her interview should be made available because she has passed on. It was embargoed, and then she said to release it after she has passed on. So if it's not available, means I have not done the synopsis yet. Okay, but basically, self-confession. So what happens if she's wearing her dark glasses? She refused to be photographed because by then she was really in her final stage. She had renal failure. All right, and what happens? Actually, she appeared in the Straits Times. Her mother was one of the oldest who donated a kidney to her, and I wanted to capture her story of that difficult moment, because right when she was born, she already had kidney failure, and that story, the oral history story, was so moving because she talked about her father, piggybacking her. So for some of you who remember the old SGH Ministry Wing, Department of Pediatrics, City is a nurse over there, and the father would piggyback her and send her to see a doctor. And I wanted to get her to talk about, towards the end, I wanted her to talk a little bit about her oral history experience. So let's listen to it. I'm running out of time, boss. I'll finish soon.
Can you share with us what's your experience like, the use of oral history in the final stage of your life? Actually, I find it very meaningful and it's helpful. Okay, it's meaningful because at least when you are gone, hopefully the people who listen to this will have a little idea of what you think of them and what you think of your life here. So it's like not a complete blank. And if there are positive things, then I think it will be a comfort to them.
And it's helpful because it also allows me to think back, recollect, put things in perspective, and then realize that actually there are a lot of good things that happen. So, very good. I think this is a very good way of helping a person to, okay, especially a person in a situation, I don't know, if I was just thinking, if the person is negative and bitter, for example, over the circumstances and having to accept the fate, then maybe this one is even good because it helps them to know, to think of the fact that besides all these bad things happening, actually there are this aspect of the good that has happened in their life as well. So maybe it will help them to kind of balance out and be more positive. Thank you so much for sharing your life story with me. You're welcome. And thank you for making the trips.
Okay, so with this, we end our presentation, and we hope that we will enthuse you even to consider giving your own oral history and collecting your own stories for whatever purposes that you have in mind. Thank you very much. We are going to have some time for Q&A.
We've overrun,
Mhm.
of course, because it was very interesting. But I think let's just open up the floor to one or two questions. But of course, the ladies will be here to talk to you individually if you're happy to, right? Maybe one or two questions. Anybody? Gentleman over there.
So far, we have been listening to reminiscence, which are all very good. Are there occasion where reminiscence trigger some bad memories, and what happens?
Thank you for the question. So I have been conducting interviews for the last 30 years. I have probably have about less than 3 experiences where things didn't turn out well, and I'm going to share with you. The first one involved a project that I was working on for many years, and that's the Prisoners of War project. And I went alone to interview this man. I remember being Holden. I think the interview, remember Joseph Holden, I think that the interview is still embargoed, and he will say, "I'll never forgive the Japanese." So that was really, really bad. There was also another incident where we did a reminiscence program on war. I was so confident that nothing would go wrong. And before I started the program, I said, let's talk about, and I didn't even talk about the war years, I just bought a big tray of food, tapioca, sweet potato, whatever it is. I left it on the table and I say, 今天我们, I spoke Mandarin. It was a Hokkien session. I said, 今日嚟講啊，一本點鐘嘅時候, let's talk about World War II. And this lady looked at me and just said, stop it. I dislike the most the Japanese. So it was just the beginning of a 2-hour program. And then I had to think on my feet and say, okay, never mind. Don't talk about the warriors. Talk about cooking class. What do you do with this tray of food that I brought? Sweet potatoes and what have you. And so, yes, it does trigger negative memories, but it may not be that bad. So we have to be a bit sensitive. That if we know that we're striking the wrong chord, we should put a stop to it. But at some point in time, this same lady who told us that she hates talking about the Japanese, in informal occasions, we begin to discover why she hated the Japanese. And that was because she was made to stand for many hours running away from the soldiers who were coming into the house to devour on women. Yeah. So yes, we do have bad experiences, and you have to manage it accordingly. Right. Thanks for the question. Any questions? Yes.
Yeah, thank you for this. So one thing is these stories that is useful for oneself and for maybe family keepsakes. I think what I'm interested in asking for your opinion is, what is the possibility of having some of these stories maybe even abbreviated and sitting on a medical system, the IT system of Singapore, such that, you know, we're all going to be expecting a lot of our carers to be from foreign lands. I myself am foreign, but I've lived in Singapore for a long time. So my story is going to be very weird and very foreign to somebody. And so everyone's kind of guessing what my story and what my likes and dislikes are. So what if as I am still able to talk, I tell you what I like, then that all gets put together in a video and it sits with my Sing Pass, so that I opt in. I say every single nurse, hospital, carer, everybody can see who I am and what I like. Because, you know, one of the things I can tell you, as a child, I was scared to death of movies. And so anything that has moving things, okay, so I'm in a nursing home, right? So, hey, tonight's movie night. Well, guess who's going to freak out? Me. So what are the chances of something that I produce gets put on the medical system?
I think that is very, very forward looking. How should I address you? Have we met before? Yes, we have. I thought so too, at NUS. Yeah. All right. Kwa Yi Hyok, all right, Dr. Kwa Yi Hyok. So Lily, we've met. So I thought, when you asked me this question, I thought this is the second time a person is, you know, Lily, I've met Lily 3 years ago when I was just about to embark on Reminiscence. At that time, she was too forward for me. And she has been wanting to tell me, now it makes sense, that why don't we start recording our stories, so that in the event when one day we are put in the daycare, it gives a profile of who we are liked, so that people will listen to our story, and then the caregivers or the carers would know our likes and dislikes and know how to take care of us better. Now I would say, Lily, that's an excellent idea. I know where you're coming from. You are way ahead of me. How to do it? Just tell your story. Give your oral history to somebody who is interested to collect your story, or offer your story to the National Archives of Singapore. Yeah, but yes, I think that's really very forward-looking in that sense. I thought I've listened to... recently I was in Dublin presenting a paper on the use of reminiscence among the elderly, and I think this subject was actually being brought up. I think they have done it in Europe, but I'm not too sure about Singapore yet. Have we done it before in Singapore? But thank you, Lily. I think that's a great suggestion. Now it really resonates with me. Initially, when you shared with me and Prof. Kwa, we were saying that, where is she coming from? Okay. Right.
All right, I think we have to call it a day. I mean, I think you agree with me that we learned a lot, and some of us got a bit emotional. This is the first time for me getting emotional in the Oldham Theatre. But thank you very much, Irene. Thank you very much, Patricia. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Yes, thank you. It's wonderful to have you with us. Thank you for coming.
If you don't mind, could you give us your feedback so that we know what you think of this place?